we're always sitting here concerned about what other people are doing and saying that this person has this huge multi-million dollar business that they started when they were like 12 and now it's all the way up there. Or you have one of your friends in high school that decided not to go to college and now he's making millions off of a YouTube channel. And thinking about what other people are doing can sometimes bring us to this place where we're fearful of taking a leap of faith on our own. But we all have to remember that whatever they're doing, everything had a... Hey yo, welcome back. If you don't know me, I'm Steven, and I'm on this journey to uncover, recover, and discover how to live life more abundantly as a man, amidst all the misconceptions in culture and pop media. We're going to dive into pretty much everything that has to do with fitness, finances, family, and I really want to focus on internal growth with a positive viewpoint through a Christian worldview. So recently around me, it's been seeming like a lot of people in my vicinity have been trying to take a leap of faith in starting something new. So that can be starting a business, changing career paths, that's huge as well. Some people are going into new degree programs in colleges, whether it's a master's, doctorate, postdoc education, moving to a different area, like a different city or even a different country, and trying a new hobby, something that they've never done before. And kudos to people who are doing all of these, especially right now. I've had my own challenges when it's come to starting something new or starting something that I've never done before or restarting something that I tried before and failed at. And I kind of have anxiety in going back to it. And I really have four things that they really sum up what I've experienced in my own life when it comes to starting something new. And I think maybe you all can relate to it as well. So number one is overcoming the fear of making mistakes and even falling short of the expectations that you set yourself with where you thought you would end up when you started that new thing. So for the Man from Dust, I really have high hopes for what it can look like, what it can bring about in my vicinity and externally when it comes to changes that I really want to see in the community with manhood and continuation of just people having a better understanding of purpose, call, as well as other things that can come up in life. So there was an interview that was done by Craig Groeschel. He's the lead pastor at Life Church, and he interviewed author and businessman, CEO of multiple organizations, Donald Miller. And Donald said something along the lines of when you're starting a business, and I would kind of apply this to pretty much anything that you're doing, starting something new, you really have to take ownership, take responsibility for where you end up and where that entity ends up. If it is a business or something that you're trying to cultivate or move in a particular direction. And that can be frightening. I'm not going to make it seem as if that's not the case. There's a lot of fear that can come up when you're trying to create something new. And so to take the grunt of all of it can be a bit challenging at first, especially because we as a society like to make sure that things are going to go a particular way before we put our chips in the pot. It's harder for us to take a chance with something that we're not sure about. So to take ownership of that, knowing that there's equal likelihood of that thing succeeding as there is for failing, that is a hard pill to swallow, in my opinion. I know it's been perpetuated a lot of times that success and failure is a representation of you as an individual, and that's not the case. It's really hard for me to see people who are trying something new or doing something that they haven't seen before, and it doesn't end up the way that they thought it would end up, and they feel disheartened, and it also took a hit on their identity as well. That's tough to see. I completely disagree with that. In my mind, the only thing that is a representation of you when it comes to success and failure is what you do as a result of whatever it is that is succeeding or failing. So if you're in a place of extreme success, or you're past the point of starting a business and now you're maintaining and it's growing exponentially, are you going to let that success control whether you're positive or negative to somebody? If you are somebody who, in a place of success, you're ready to, as they would say, take the elevator back down to carry more people up to where you are, then that's how it should be. But if you're somebody who, once you get to that area of success, you'll turn your nose up at anybody who started where you started because you're far from where you started, that's where that can become problematic. And the failure on the other end of the spectrum, if failure is something that can encourage you, it can bring you to even greater education, even greater triumphs later on, because we all know testimonies come after a test. And whether you fail or pass isn't indicative of who you are, it's just indicative of where you are. Number 2, overcoming the fear of external judgment. Judgment is a really big thing that we deal with nowadays, and we see it all over social media, right? You see this one politician who did something, and now the entirety of Twitter is just, one of my uncles calls it Charlie Foxtrot. He's a military man. It's just a continuation of a circle of the same thing over and over. You just go down and it's just people commenting, retweeting, posting about the same thing and just giving their rant or their ideas about it. And it can be problematic because we have those expectations for when we do something wrong. It's hard to take that venture if we come against somebody, and cancel culture is the first thing that we're interacting with. It's the first thing that we meet with once we hit a wall. It's not allowing of us to grow as a community, as individuals, when it's harder for us to take those chances, to take those leaps. When it comes to not dealing with trauma, it can manifest itself as triggers, and those triggers are a result of the insecurities that have been manifested based on the trauma that you experienced. So an example would be if you never had emotional validation as a child, then when you become an adult, you can become emotionally unstable, or you can move to this place of aloofness when it comes to others' emotions or even your own. You can respond to things in a very stoic way, as if things will happen regardless of your intentions or regardless of your motives or regardless of your works. That is a hard thing to deal with, because you have to get to the root of the insecurity. I've said before, and a lot of people have said something similar, that we can either have scars or we can have band-aids. The scar is a representation, it's the testimony. It's an experience that you've had before that damaged you, and now you've healed from it. It's not to say that it never happened, but it's to say that you've now created a stronger, more resilient place to deal with similar circumstances. Or you can have a band-aid where the band-aid is covering up a wound that isn't necessarily healing, but it allows you to not necessarily approach the wound directly. So anytime you experience similar trauma, it's going to re-engage with the wound underneath the band-aid, and it's going to continue to fester and get worse, and the pain is still there. You're not healing from it, you're just covering it up. So one of my insecurities that I dealt with for a really long time, and I still deal with now, right? I'm still going through these things. Malleability. I wanted to be a jack of all trades because I wanted to impress others. I'm not gonna lie and say that I wasn't looking for the approval of others, or I wasn't looking for praise or whatever it is. I feel like we all have this innate sense to want to be accepted, right? We were created for community. We were created to be in community. And to diminish that need is far from what I think is actually natural for us. And so for me, the malleability comes in because in doing so many different things, it allows me to be part of so many different communities, as well as when I'm not able to be part of one thing because I failed at it. If I have 10 things on my plate and one of those things fails, well, I have 9 other things that I can continue to do. I have 9 other things that I can continue to connect with people on, versus if I have 2 things. If one of those fails, well, that's 50% of whatever it is that I'm able to connect with people on, gone. That is difficult to come back from, in my opinion, based on where I was at the time and where I am now. I'm still uncovering those things. So how it presents itself now is it is harder for me to take those chances and trust myself to do new things, to try new things, to try something again that I've done before, because I'm concerned about what it's going to turn out like, or if I'm going to receive that community lovingly, people are going to accept me with open arms. I'm looking for acceptance in some things, and I have to acknowledge that. And leaving it as a band-aid or a scar, if you leave it as a band-aid, then think of it this way: if you have an open sore and a scar, and trying something new is like jumping into the ocean, I'd rather have a scar that's healed over than have an open sore that can get all the salt water in and burn. So the third pillar, in my opinion, is going to be overcoming the fear of being stuck where you are right now, not making progress. Unfortunately, there's no holistic way to evaluate exactly where you are in a project, because we'd have to be so far into the future to see where things end up, to understand where we need to be right now to make sure that we get there in a reasonable time based on our mental capacity to be on a journey. And that's all going to be individual, and it all depends on what we're doing at that time, because people have different capacities. But the question that you can ask yourself is, when will I be happy with where this project is, considering where, how, and when I started? And what's the end goal? I'd suggest, and my wife, Ashlyn, suggested this to me too. She said, write out a vision of what you want the fruits of your efforts to be in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. And that was the most challenging thing for me to do, because it's easier for me to start something and not really have a pathway through which I'm supposed to walk. Now, I say easier because it takes less work, and I say less work at the front end. But in the long term, it takes far more work to try to get somewhere when you don't have a map. Can you imagine walking to another state and trying to find a particular grocery store without directions? You have no directions, you have no understanding of where you are, you have no understanding of where you're going, and you have no understanding of how long it's going to take to get there. That can be challenging. And that's kind of how it feels when you walk without a roadmap in any sort of situation in life. So if you have a fitness goal, you can say, I want to have, I want to be able to see my six-pack in 2 years. And the roadmap would be your nutrition plan, it would be the end goal, and it would be your fitness plan as well. So what am I going to eat? How frequently am I going to eat it? What are my workouts going to look like? How frequently am I going to work out? How long am I going to stay on this? Do I have any plans to do anything else? Do I want to get into a sport? Do I want to start focusing on mobility training? Whatever it is, it's a lot easier to get to those destinations when you have a map that can lead you to those destinations without having to waste unnecessary energy just walking in a circle. Israelites in the Bible in Exodus took an 11-day journey, and it ended up being 40 years, if I remember correctly. So number 4 would be overcoming the second thoughts of why you're wanting to do this in the first place. What are your intentions? Are you trying to get praise from others? Are you on this journey for self-preservation, self-proclamation? I've heard somebody say before, your followers list might be full, but you might still feel empty at the end of the day. And that's kind of profound. It's not sustainable for long. After a while, you do burn out with trying to reach people specifically for praise, specifically for trying to get more people to follow you. There's not as much fulfillment as there is when you are trying to do something meaningful. And I said this before, all of us seek recognition to a degree, and that's okay. We're created to be in community. Praise from other people can sometimes be confused with acceptance or assimilation into their community. Praise can sometimes be facetious, surface level. In acceptance, you avoid the cancel culture. You avoid being in a space where when you make a mistake, you're outcasted. You can be vulnerable. You can make mistakes. You can have faults. You can be quirky and have your kinks, and you're still accepted in that community. You're still accepted by the people around you. Now, on the flip side, with the self-proclamation, pride might get you to hurt people or sour relationships. And that's a really detrimental thing to yourself as an individual, as well as to anything that you're trying to build up. If people have this understanding that you're so focused on success through the lens of wanting to bring yourself up at a higher pedestal, it gets harder to support somebody like that when you're being stepped on all the time. In my opinion, the most unnerving, humbling, faith-inducing, sleep-disrupting thing you can ever do is start a journey when you know just how far you are from the finish line. Out of everything, though, one thing's for sure: you cannot beat the feelings of diminishing doubt, meeting your goals, and exceeding expectations. I encourage you all to start something and love the journey, love the valleys and the mountaintops that you go through and on, because it's all part of it. At the end of the day, life is a journey, and we're supposed to walk through it. We're not trying to get to the end. I mean, that doesn't sound like a good life to me. We're trying to enjoy every day as it's given to us. So why should we treat anything else in our life any different? Till next time.